Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming back to Transform Your Impact. So excited to have you on the show. We are learning the keys to making massive impact in the world, to living the life of your dreams, and to making money while doing what you want in the world. And today we have a very accomplished entrepreneur on the show, Kyle Wilson. He is the founder of Jim Rohn International, Your Success Store, and lessonsfromnetwork.com. He's also a producer of 100 plus best-selling products. So he's a strategist, marketer, producer, and speaker, and a #1 best-selling author on top of that. So excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here, Kyle.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Awesome. So will you tell us about these wonderful things that you're up to?
Well, I got started in the seminar business. I grew up in Texas. You probably can tell that. Little small town, and quite serendipitously, I never went to college. How I ended up getting in the seminar business and eventually partnering with Jim Rohn is, just a story in itself. But I got in the seminar business at age 27. I got really good at it. Within 3 or 4 years, I'm traveling the country, going into a new city, getting a couple of thousand people for an event. And I would hire a combination of either Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn or Og Mandino, and did that for a couple of years. Things were great. And then I had an opportunity in 1993 to partner with Jim. I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And Jim, I think, is one of the great philosophers. And I was a pretty good promoter or marketer. And so, I took his message, and that first year took him from 20 dates at 4,000 to 110 dates at 10,000 and 25. And then we started creating products. And the first little product, I think, was a little bit of a God download. And I'm sure you're into that, right? And
yeah.
It was really based on his secret sauce and our avatar of customer. And this is way back in the 90s, right? But it was a little quote book, but had a to and a from, and it became a viral marketing tool. We moved 6 million of those. Ended up doing them for Mark Victor Hansen, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, and then just started creating products. And really, once someone would discover Jim Rohn, they would buy everything we had. So I started another company called Your Success Store, and I started promoting, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, and hundreds of those products as well. And then when the internet came, that was the huge opportunity for me. So by the time I sold all my companies in late 2007, we had 1 million plus customers and subscribers to our newsletter, and had sold millions of books. So and the main thing is I got to work with some great people, and I still do. I came back out of retirement and got to work, with all the same guys. Of course, Jim passed away in 2009. But Darren Hardy, Robin Sharma, just so many people that I'm still getting to work with now.
That's amazing. Awesome. So will you obviously you have some gifts here that you've harnessed. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience of how did you create so much impact and success?
Well, obviously I had to have work ethic. I had to have ambition, but I think, I always say marketing is pretty simple. It's just connecting the dots. It's not being manipulative. It's not being clever. It's not trying to churn through people. I'm so opposed to so much of what I see currently in the marketplace. So the principles haven't changed. The same principles in the 90s applied in the 2000s apply now. Whether it's social media marketing, whatever you're doing, it still needs to be principle based, and it's where you connect the dots. You connect the dots between your products and services in the most efficient, effective way to connect that with an audience using your secret sauce. It depends on all these other conditions, the competition, the marketplace. But you focus on what you're good at. You focus on what you're about. And, I know we've talked before philosophically, we come from the same camp. I'm all about attracting, not pursuing. I don't go out and hunt. I farm, I fish. I put good stuff out and I attract the people I really want to work with. And so, a lot of that is simple. It's just connecting the dots. And so many people are selling things out there. And Jim Rohn would talk about the exotic. You don't have to do the exotic. This stuff is simple. You go plant what you want and you cultivate it and you take good care of it. Back to the farming. It's like, if you want to have a great wine, it's going to take a little time, right? And so that's how I look at business. It's going to take time. And back in the day of those little quote books, I created those not to sell as a product. I created those to get people, I call it the wheel, And it's something I came up with in 1994. You get people on the wheel and you take them around and, and let them decide where they want to engage with you. But you put good stuff out and you attract the people you want.
Awesome. And so, so wonderful. So you came back out of retirement. So you were clearly in love with what you were doing. Were you always on a path doing something that you really enjoyed and felt fulfilled by? Or was there a point when you were like, oh, I don't know if I'm on my path?
Yeah, so that's been more of a recent discovery process. I was always ambitious. I was always an entrepreneur. So as a young kid, I tried to find ways to make money. And, I kind of paid my own way for the most part. And I do think I had a little chip on my shoulder. I didn't go to college. I was the only one in my family. And I had made a lot of bad decisions. And so I think by the time I got on my path, I was just ambitious, and very serendipitously, I ended up in the business I got in, ended up meeting the most amazing people. And I can't take credit for that. I feel like I was just, kind of stumbled my way into it. But later on, especially selling my companies, I knew when I sold, and it was a family decision, there were some dynamics where I just felt I would be better served. And I had the only person I would have sold my company to want to buy me. And I felt it would be in great hands for my team. And we had an aggressive profit sharing program, and all the speakers I represented were going to benefit because the same company was buying Success Magazine. So it was this whole series of things that led me to decide, but I knew anything I would do after that had to really be pure passion for me. What got me there, I was fortunate. We got to serve so many people and make a difference. But I think after that, it's been 100%. I get to decide what I want to do. It's not like I built something. Sometimes you go build something and you have it, whether it was, so you were clear about it to begin with. But what I've gotten to do the last 3 or 4 years has been totally intentional. And so, yeah, it's been a journey for me.
Awesome. So will you tell me, were there some, it sounded like you connected with these amazing people almost right off the bat, but were there certain people that really mentored you and supported your vision and guided you along the way?
Yeah. So, and this isn't a plug because we're going to talk about it later, but I did this book called 52 Lessons I Learned from Jim Rohn and Other Legends. And that's what it's full of. It's just telling stories of, working with Brian Tracy and being at his home. And this is 1994. And he's saying, Kyle, because I was a young promoter. And he said, success is like getting a plane off the ground. In the beginning, you're going down the runway 80 miles an hour, you're still on the ground using up more fuel than when you actually are 300 or 30,000 feet in the air, right? And so he said, the goal is sometimes you got to pay the price for those first couple of years to then benefit. And Dennis Waitley telling me, hey, he's written 18 #1 books. And he said, every book I wrote was at night. He said, I had my full-time job as a speaker. And he said, it was called prime time is the main time. He said, during prime time TV, for most people, he was writing his books. And so many people, they have a side hustle. They have a full-time job, but their wealth plan, right, is a side hustle that might be nights or weekends in the beginning, right? So that was so valuable. John Maxwell gave me just one of the best insights that really turned the culture of my company. I had 20 employees and I was a rainmaker. I was good at what I did, but I wasn't a good manager. I wasn't a good employer. And the pain of that really put me on a search to create a great culture and a great team. And, some things John shared. And so I share all that in the book, but endless, Paul J. Meyer, Darren Hardy, and of course, Jim Rohn with so many phenomenal lessons. And, but one of Jim's great lessons was, he said, if you want to be successful, bring value to the marketplace. He said, if you want to be wealthy, be valuable to valuable people. And so I always led everything I ever did with value. How do you bring value? And so, yeah, you're not going to walk up to someone doing really well, for the most part, and get their attention on what they can do for you. You got to figure out how you're going to bring value to them, right? And so I would say, just about every relationship, I found a way to be valuable. And by bringing value, and in my case, it was putting them on a platform, to speak at my events, or building a big list and then selling their products. So sometimes I would even create things just to bring value. I'd do an event, not because I love doing events so much, but it gave me the opportunity to become more valuable, right, to the people I wanted to work with.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Well, my next question was going to be, do you have principles and values that you operate in your business by? And it sounds like those are some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, it sounds cliche, right? But, everything's got to be win-win. I remember Stephen Covey's book. He said, if it's win-lose, it's not going to work. So if someone comes in and it's good for me and it's not good for them, it's not going to work. So that's how I look at everything. Is this relationship or whatever it may be end up in a business divorce? It's not worth the time and effort. So for it to work, it has to be serendipitous and good for all parties, right? You have to know that you're bringing value, they're bringing value. And the times you cheat a little bit on that and just go for the money or go for whatever it is, it always costs you in the end, right? And so ultimately, one of my highest values is I want to work with good people. That's like, I have my inner circle. Everything I do now is by design. And the highest value is not how successful someone is. It's the kind of person they are. Are they a giver? What's their philosophy? And Jim Rohn was a philosophical driven speaker. He talked about your philosophy will determine your success. And that's the beauty of all this. If you do things the right way, you're going to win in the long run anyway, right? You don't have to keep starting over.
Awesome. I love that. Wonderful. Yeah, well, will you tell us some things about, like, what are you most excited about? What's on the horizon right now? What are you most proud of?
Okay. What I'm most proud of in the past or currently, or
what are you most proud of of your successes, and then also what are you most excited about moving forward?
I think the thing I'm the most proud of looking back was the becoming the culture we built as a company. Again, we had a lot of success in a lot of different ways, but the biggest struggle, the biggest search, Jim Rohn would quote the Bible and say, if you search, you'll find, but you have to go looking, right? Good ideas aren't going to interrupt you. You have to go looking. And I really went looking. I had a lot of pain over a long period of time. And I felt it was a little bit of a download, but it came through searching, and I came up with a 10-point review system, and I came up with a celebration plan. I came up with a profit sharing plan, and we implemented that. And over a period of a couple of years, it totally changed our culture. And I focused on building leaders within my team. And looking back at that is the thing I'm most proud of. And when I sold the company, people had to get referred to come work for us. I mean, no one would quit. They were bringing in their friends, and we built something really amazing. What I love doing now, it's evolving. I have some things I'm really proud of that we do now that I think are really beneficial to the people I work with, especially these books we do. But I'm proud of my inner circle. I'm proud of the quality of people. I'm proud of the incredible miracles that happen when people show up, because it's the quality of the people that make it so good. It's not that I'm getting up there and saying anything that's necessarily that good, but I feel like the quality of the people, I feel like God shows up, and it's just this powerful experience. And I'm hoping you can join us in Philadelphia. I'm there next week. And
oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, awesome. My Dallas inner circle's tomorrow, and I have people that fly in from all over the country. We had Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, and Lee Aronson, the creator of 2.5 Men and The Big Bang Theory, his wife and he have hosted 2 of them at their house in LA. We outgrew it, but Lisa, everyone needs to check it out. She's on Amazon and has a show called Soul Blazing with Lisa Haisha. And she's spoken at the last 4. She's been part of my last 2 books. But we just have that kind of quality of people. We have Grammy winners, Emmy winners, but they're good people. It's not, that's the number one criteria. That's mostly entrepreneurs and business people. But if you can come join us, I'll tell you about it. Because Philadelphia, I mean, what are the odds, right?
Totally crazy. Amazing. It's very serendipitous. Well, so for those who are watching, if they don't know what the inner circle is, I mean, you've talked about it a little bit, but can we tell them like explicitly, like what are the offerings that you have, and so people can get excited about,
Yeah,
following more?
I would say about 4 years ago, I was skiing with a couple of good friends, Darren Hardy, John Assaraf, who was in The Secret, Eric Berman, who runs Brian Tracy's company, and Stephen Cox, who has Get Lessons. And I was the oddball out. It was these guys who were all part of a San Diego mastermind. And Darren said, hey, can Kyle come? And I was good friends with John as well. And so they kept talking all this inside lingo from their mastermind. And I'm like, hey, I'm in a desert here in Dallas. And I'd been retired and been out of the game. They said, you just got to go start your own. And so I literally began it for me. It's not a business model. Everyone's always saying, God, if you would take this to every city and do this and do that. And I'm like, that's not why I do it. I mean, it is a profitable venture I do, but it's you almost have to be invited. It's an application process. It's inexpensive. Actually, people are blown away how inexpensive, but it is, you have to be approved and application. And that's my highest value, is to bring good people. I'm always thinking, what will, help me get, Seth Mosley, 2-time Grammy winner, 30 years old, to fly in. Phil Collin of Def Leppard, lead guitar player for Def Leppard, has spent the day with us. And he's an amazing personal development guy. Mark Victor Hansen's been to my Dallas and my LA, and I've never paid anyone, right, to come. Jeffrey Gitomer was just at the Philadelphia one, the #1 sales guy in the world. And I'm thinking, what would get them to come and get value, right? And it's not going to be anything I teach. I have some good marketing stuff, but I am a promoter at heart. So I have different people share that are there, and we do help seats and pick a topic, and we actually, we'll begin it with meditation, begin each one. Yeah.
Awesome.
And kind of invite, again, the cost of someone to invest a day, right, is the time, the energy. Everyone's got other stuff going on. So to really get focused on making that day valuable. So, my website's kylewilson.com, and I have stuff about the inner circle and book programs I do, and the 52 lessons is on there, and that's free. And
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So marketing is sort of the backbone of how you've built your career. And do you have some tips and techniques that you could share with us around marketing? Right,
absolutely. I'm a principle-based marketer, and I think that's how you win. You win by thinking long-term and being relationship focused. The majority of my business now still comes through referrals. It comes from people I've known for 20 years. And so again, so many people are short-sighted. So I do a little talk called 7 Marketing Principles to Build Your Business, and we don't really have time, but I'll kind of blow through some. We'll see where we go. The first one is that, marketing is about connecting the dots, and we already touched on that. And then second, I say marketing is about principles and techniques. And I'm a technique guy. I've always used techniques. So marketing is just a combination of techniques and, of course, principles. And I always say, never let a good technique get in the way of a principle. And so, techniques go all the way back to, when I was filling up rooms in the 90s, but there was also principle-based. So right now, social media, that's a technique, right? Direct mail is a technique. Instant messaging people and text messaging and all those are different techniques. And I'm a technique guy. You don't go build a huge list, but you never let it violate a principle. And so, principles to me are #1, have a good product. I can't believe how many people say, okay, I'm going to dictate a book into my recording, send it off to India, get it done, put that out. Worst idea ever, because that's not how you go build a brand or build people. That's churning out junk, usually. I discourage people from doing books unless they're really committed to doing a great book. I discourage people from doing an online program unless it's going to be great. If it is great, that's one of the greatest marketing tools you can do. Apple, every Starbucks, every major company begins with having a great product. So people would so much be better off having one product that's great, right, than throwing stuff against the wall. So, and then having great customer service. How many companies have spent hundreds of millions on marketing and then their customer service is horrific? One of the worst marketing tools you could ever do, right? And of course, being consistent. Most importantly, being relational, really caring about people. When you care, that makes all the difference. Doesn't matter what your product is, you will win if you have a good product and you care about people and have time. You know, Jim Rohn said the great killer of success is impatience and greed. You know, people try and get something for nothing too quickly and they become impatient. Greatness will always win, but you have to be patient. You don't plant the vineyard and think you're going to have a great wine in 3 weeks, right? And so it's going to take time, but that's how you win. Number 3, it's being strategic. You know, I always say everything works, but some things don't work that well. You know, putting business cards on windshields works, it just doesn't work that well. So you got to find the 1 or 2 things that will knock down the dominoes. So again, I usually tell people less is more. What is the one thing? You know, and Gary Keller wrote a book called The One Thing, and it's the same principle. But when I went into a city, I literally would have 20 or 30 things I could do that work, but I put most of my focus on the 2 or 3 or 4. So you got to find the 1 or 2 things that work the greatest. And then number 4 for me, Alexa, was the wheel. And, you know, let's draw a circle, right? And spokes on a wheel, and each spoke is a product or service, right? And the thing is, you get people on the wheel, then you want to take them around. It's very different than a funnel. And I understand funnels. I have 3 or 4 membership sites. I understand funnels totally, but the wheel is different. The wheel is, and it's really how I do most of my business. I get people on my wheel and I just talk to them. And I'm not very agenda driven, but occasionally I give them something to say yes to. Hey, I'm going to be doing an event on XYZ date with Ron White, the memory champion, and Todd Stoudemire, Major League Baseball. And it's 2 days and it's priced economically, and people come. And if people come spend 2 days with you and they like you and they trust you, then they might want to do my inner circle or do coaching or whatever. But I put good stuff out and I'm not too worried about who says yes. People, the right people will say yes. So that's very different than a funnel that's very agenda driven. Mine is, I want to put good stuff out consistently and let those who want to say yes. And some people will tell me, hey, I can't afford it. And I'm like, no problem. I have so much free stuff. I have so many free videos. You can go to the website. There's Brian Tracy, Mark Victor Hansen, Darren Hardy, interviews, blogs, tons of free, right? But if I do offer something that costs money, you know, and I put it out there, you know, we'll kind of go from there. And so number 4 is the wheel. And the number 1 thing about the wheel is, how do you get people on it? Too many people are focused about adding more spokes. My focus is, how do I get people on the wheel? And so for me, that's where that little quote book was born. I thought, how do I get more people? Jim didn't have a list when we partnered. There was 0 list. And I knew his secret sauce was he was a great wordsmith. And he connected with people and people loved him. So the little quote book was an opportunity to empower my advocates to go share his message. And so they would buy 10, 100, 1,000 at a time. And it was leatherette, gold foil, 100 quotes. And people would say, you should be charging $5, $6 because I sold them for $1 each. I'm like, that's not my goal. My goal is to get someone to buy 10 of these, to give them away, or 100. And that's how you move 6 million over time. But it had to be good. That's number 1, right? Had to really connect. And we might not have time for all these, but the 5th one would be, I'll share a couple more, would be social proof and testimonials. So you always got to say, what makes you different? What makes you unique? Don't try and be anyone else but you, right? That's one big mistake people make, is they try and copy other people. Find out what makes you great. Find out what your secret sauce is, what makes you special, and present that to the world. And always say to people, I'm not easy to get a hold of, right? So I'm not that accessible one-on-one, but I'm 24/7 with my website. I'm 24/7 on Instagram. I'm 24/7 on Facebook. So make your website great. Make your Instagram great. Make your Facebook great, because that's 24/7. Then learn to, there's like 4 key things with your website. It's got to have social proof. It needs to have a mystique. It needs to have some key bullet points about you, and it has to have a way for people to engage with you, some sort of opt-in, right? And so to me, social proof is one of the most important things. So you got to find a way to put out to people, you're unique. You have something very special. And then the other one is you have to build an audience. You have to build a tribe. And people that have watched Shark Tank, it's like people will come with a great idea and they'll say, do you have an audience? Do you have a list? And the answer is no. Okay, so a lot of great ideas, but you've got to have an audience. So that's number one, is always thinking, how do you build an audience first? People come up with product ideas. Well, how are you going to get people to sell that product? And then what's the second step and the third step? So I believe, if you have two doctors and one has a list and one doesn't, one's building the list and one isn't, one's talking to their list and one's not, the one building the list, talking to their list is going to win over time. I've had best-selling authors who never built a list. They sold millions of books, never built a list, and they're starting over, versus someone who built a list, who, became an author, but they built a list and talked to the list. Same thing with speakers. I know speakers who, speak 100 times a year, make $1 million, but they never built a list. And other speakers now that have huge coaching programs, and again, they do what I do. They just put good stuff out, and those that say yes want to say yes. So it's really not an option anymore not to build an audience, right? With social media. And on that caveat, when you have a podcast or you have a Facebook group, you've got to somehow convert those people onto your email list. People say email's dead. It's not. So one of my good friends, Tom Ziegler, the Ziegler brand has 5 million people on Facebook. And he used to put a post out and he would get 100,000 likes.
Wow.
Now he puts a post out and he gets 500 likes because Facebook changed the algorithm. So the goal is, if you have a big following, you still need to somehow get those people onto an email list and then talk to your email list with good stuff, not just selling them, but building a relationship with them. Because cold traffic's hard to sell, right? It's going to take time to build a relationship. So when the internet began, most people were selling, and I was just trying to build an audience and build a relationship and build trust. And over time, have offers that if they want it, great, but we're just going to bring value, and attract the right people. And again, that's just a principle-based philosophy that I know will work no matter what, right? So that's a few.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. If there's one piece of advice that you could give to our listeners around what would transform their impact more than any one thing, what would you say that is?
It's a good question. It's almost a unique question. I think everyone's different. There's some tactical advice and there's some principle-based advice. Principle-based advice is be authentic, find out what really is important to you and stay true to that. The tactical advice, I think, is be patient and build an audience. Don't think it's going to happen overnight. You have to consistently put good stuff out and test small. And I have an example if you've got 1 minute.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So a good friend of mine, Seth Mosley, 2-time Grammy winner. He's 30, written 800 songs, has a publishing company. He's a real underachiever, right? But someone said, Seth, you should start an online program on writing songs. So he said, what do you think? And this was 2 years ago. And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me, is there an audience out there that would buy that? He said, I don't know. And I said, how big's your audience? He said, I don't have one. I'm a full-time producer, songwriter. I don't know. And I said 2 things. You have to build an audience in advance and you have to test. So let's talk about the audience. Number one is, what you do is awesome for social media, and I follow you, and you don't hardly ever post. You need to up your social media game. You have a studio, and you have cool people come in. And so up your Instagram and Facebook. And number 2, maybe you should start a podcast. He said, I've been thinking about starting a podcast. And I'm like, okay, because again, you've already got all the logistical stuff. You're set up for that. You're good at that. Editing, making it cool. Right. So he did. Simultaneously, how do we test this? And I always believe, Alexa, do a small gathering of people first. Online is hard because online people don't know you and they're bombarded. Put out to your world a test. I said, Seth, how about we try and get 20 people on a songwriter course for some reasonable price, like $297, and just see what happens. And if they don't do it, bad idea, let it go. If they do, create a waiting list and do a second one, and let's just test it. Well, they did. They loved it. So we immediately started a second event like 3 months later, but started a waiting list. He doubled the price, doubled the people, sold that out. Third one, tripled the price. Now it's $1,000, 100 people, sold that out. At the same time, he got to work through his content. It's really hard to do an online program, just staring in a camera and doing something very, sterile and trying to create something, versus if someone's truly an expert, and he is, just showing up, right? And letting the magic happen. Mm-hmm. And then he had guests come, and then he got to get feedback from an audience. And then after a year, he said, my podcast is taken off, our social media is taken off. There is a demand, we have testimonials, and I have a guy that went through the course that said, you should do an online program, and I'm an online marketer. I said, boom, okay, now you should do it. And he's such a perfectionist. He did it so amazingly well. It took him another year to create it, but he launched it. Actually, my last Philadelphia Inner Circle, we had him on a video call, and he was launching the next day, and he had a grand slam. But I always say that, too many people take an online course and they go try and build something, right? Instead of testing it and building it small and kind of getting that audience of advocates together. And that's just my personal opinion, but I think everything, find a way to test it small. If I'm going to do an event, it's a little formula I have, is I have to create an irresistible offer at an irresistible price to a small group of my core people with a deadline and a fear of loss. So for example, I did a big Brian Tracy 3-day event. Darren Hardy, a bunch of people came and spoke. It was a 20-year anniversary of a program Brian and I created called the Success Mastery Academy. But I was willing not to do it. So my test was, I went out to my inner circle, best price, a deadline of like 5 days to take advantage of the price, a special reception with Brian and Darren Hardy, for no one else would get, best seating, and then the promise that after this, I'm going to go out to the world, my email list, and then after that, I'm going to go out to affiliates and social media. But they had to do it, and I was prepared that if they didn't jump all over it, it's not going to work. Because if my inner circle at a discounted price with additional incentives isn't going to do it, it's not going to work. So you got to find that way, but there has to be a discount. There has to be a little bit of other people will if you don't. So I always say, go to that small close list with the promise you're going to your bigger list, with the promise then you're going to your joint ventures list in social media. So that way you can kind of track it. And that's how I do every event I ever do.
Awesome. And you probably sold that one out, didn't you?
Well, we had a very successful event. Yeah, we did. But that same formula applies to an online program. Be able to put it out early enough to test it, and just see if the small audience is going to do it. Because everyone will say they're going to do it until they sign up to do it. Or the other mistake people make is it's not an irresistible offer. So you won't know unless it's the irresistible offer. Your best, cheapest, throw in some extra bonuses, because then now you have momentum, because then you can go out to your next list and say, hey, it's 30% sold out, right? And so that creates momentum. And at the same time, if they don't do it, they're not going to, other people aren't going to do it.
Right, clear, got it. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your expertise, but you also have a free gift for the listeners, yeah?
Well, I have my 52 lessons. It's called 52 Lessons. I learned from legends and Jim Rohn and other people I promote it, and it's got powerful lessons. Darren Hardy, Brian Tracy, Mark Victor Hansen, Les Brown, Robin Sharma, John Maxwell. And I'm not taking their lessons that I read about. These are through the collaborations and conversations and things we did together. And from that was birthed the lesson. So it's something the majority of times someone would have never read or heard from Jim Rohn. And you got time for one?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you're going to edit, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll share one from Jim Rohn. And again,
Awesome.
this is a very philosophical one, but it was the early days of me being a seminar promoter, very early on. And Jim came to an event, and I had dropped the ball. I'd taken my eyes off the puck. And when I get to the hotel that morning, the event I think was going to be 10 to 3. And this was doing these different small events around the country. And on this one, the hotel had someone in my room. I go to the room and another group is in my room. And I'm freaking out. And I go ask the hotel and they say, oh, your event doesn't start till 10. These people end at 9:30. And I'm like, what? We have to set up a stage and sound and product table, and people are going to get here at 9 to get a good seat. And this can't be because it's 7 in the morning. And they did not have an alternative room. It was just, to me, it was a nightmare, and I was beside myself and shamed and everything else, right? So Jim strolls down about 8 o'clock on his way to breakfast. You know, he's still in his jeans and shirt and gonna have breakfast and go back up to the room and change, come down at 10. And I'm freaking out, and I tell him what happened. And he looked at me. He said, he said, it's not like a good friend died. He said, it's gonna be okay. He said, people will wait. We'll give them a refund if they want to leave, no worries. But, I'll give my all-time best seminar. I'll stay late and it'll be okay. It's not like a good friend died. Wow. And here's what's really cool about that, Alexa. I've never heard Jim say that from stage. I never heard him say that in a conversation. I never heard him say that before or after. That one moment was such a magnificent thing he shared, right? Life-changing. And I've said it 100 times since. Someone tells me something's the end of the world, that's really not anything, right? Hey, it's not like a good friend died. It's going to be okay. Wow. So that was a powerful lesson for me. Wow. And that just tells you how amazing Jim is, right? He just at that moment had the words of wisdom.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for your time and all of your amazing lessons that you've been passing on. Really appreciate your time and your energy.
It's been my honor and my privilege. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for Transform Your Impact. Please tune in again tomorrow. We've got more heavy hitters, entrepreneurs, visionaries, and creatives who are giving you the secret sauce to maximum impact, success, and to living the life of your dreams. Can't wait to see you tomorrow.